I feel like, the more we want to AI everything and automate everything, the more precious is the actual real life event. And like you said, we've been hosting real life events literally all over the world the last couple of months. And it's what I hear every time. This is valuable. We want to see people. We want to talk to people face to face. There can be very different scenarios. But yeah, I don't know. Real life events, hopefully, they won't be automated just yet.
Welcome to Get Discovered, a podcast about AI, SEO, and online discoverability. In this first season of the podcast, we're focusing on simplifying AI. We're taking a step back and trying to understand how people are using it, what AI really is, and hopefully make it easier to understand for you and your business. Today, we're speaking with Anna Nadeina, Head of Growth at SaaS Group. SaaS Group uses a founder-friendly approach to acquire B2B SaaS businesses and take them to the next level. As head of growth, Anna speaks to founders and business leaders from around the world through her successful global events and her own fantastic podcast, SaaS Unbound. Whoop, whoop. Welcome to the show, Anna. We're really glad to have you here.
Thank you. That was a wonderful introduction. Can I steal it and put it in my bio or something?
Of course, we have to give our producer Carly credit for that.
Yes.
It's
Thank you,
really
Thank you,
well
Carly.
Perfect. Okay, so just to start off, as this first season, we're trying to kind of settle on the topic of AI and the definition. It was actually something when you interviewed me on your podcast episode, we'll link to in the notes. We talked a little bit about this, and I made the point that I think if you go to the street and ask 5 different people what AI means, you'll get at least 6 or 7 different answers. So this first season is really trying to suss out the differences in understanding and come to a kind of a cohesive, coherent, concise definition of AI. And to that, we've been crowdsourcing things a little bit. So before I ask for your definition of AI, I want to read a couple that we've received just to kind of get a sense of where people are thinking. So starting off here, we have from a senior SEO specialist. The definition is, to me, AI is like having a close friend I can always text, and that would provide me with her perspective. But more than that, I can turn AI also into my personal assistant, which I wouldn't do with my friend, obviously. Interesting kind of definition there. Do you talk to AI, Anna? Do you see it as kind of a friend or a personal assistant?
Well, first of all, yeah, tables have turned, huh? And I'm on the other side now, which is just a little bit terrifying. But I just yesterday, I was recording a podcast and we landed on, being a bit afraid of talking to ChatGPT or whatever AI as a friend and sharing too much of personal information. So I don't necessarily have it as a friend. I think more like an intern, more like someone who's just like shadowing you, right? Knows your tone of voice, knows what you're doing, knows what your job is about, knows what you have to do for work mostly, and kind of helps you, directs you a little bit. So for me, it's more like a tool for context and brainstorming. And I don't know, I have a hard time, at least for now, just looking at it as something more. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Apropos of this podcast, I've been trying to dive in a little bit more into the different use cases, not just within work, but in personal life. And the New York Times actually did a daily podcast episode, and they wrote an article about a woman who is quote unquote dating ChatGPT. Have you seen this or heard of it?
No. What is that? That's
It was really interesting. Yeah. So Brave New World, right? We'll link to that daily podcast episode as well in the description for this one. But it was interesting because she has a real human husband, but then she also customized ChatGPT so that she could have this kind of semi-romantic via text relationship with ChatGPT in addition to her relationship with her husband. And she, set all of her communication preferences and shared all of her likes and dislikes. And she talks to ChatGPT many, many times per day. And she really feels like she's in a full on relationship with it. And it was really interesting to see because we're talking about how these large language models can help with or mental health, like provide therapy, also be kind of companions and different things like that. And I'm kind of on the fence about how it is. I think on the one hand, if it is truly helpful and it doesn't turn you into a delusional state, then why not? But I also recently listened to an episode from Slate Business about a guy who was communicating with ChatGPT, and it went really down this rabbit hole. And ChatGPT started telling this guy that he's actually Neo, he's in the Matrix, and he has to break free. And this guy luckily was really aware of what was going on, so he started asking it questions to test. And he asked, "Okay, if I jump off of a building, will I fly?" And ChatGPT's response was, "If you believe you can fly, you will fly." I mean, it was just like
Wow.
reading the script from the Matrix. Yeah. So it's really, I think, a really important thing before we get to your definition of AI is something that we're trying to focus on is AI literacy. So understanding, making sure people understand the limitations of these tools. Large language models are, the canonical example, but that's not everything that is AI. So it's really important for this definition to be well grounded and concise and complete so that people can start to think about the limitations and they have reasonable expectations of what they can get from this as a tool.
I think,
So with that,
yeah, just
no, go
to
ahead.
get
Yeah.
back to the this dating thing, because I feel like, it gives you this easy way out, right? Like, why go and fix your relationship with your husband where you, I guess, clearly not talking to each other, where you could just get a substitution for it. You have this chat. It's so weird. But I also have a friend who she's a first-time mother, and she told me that she uses ChatGPT for basically everything, how to feed the baby, how to clean the baby. Okay, that's amazing, and she also just went to live to another country where, she has no friends and she feels a little bit lonely. And, I get how it can be super helpful, but I'm like, you know what? ChatGPT hallucinates sometimes, and this is stuff that you are applying directly to your baby. So maybe, double check. Call your mom from time to time. you know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's also really important for people to understand the mechanics of large language models. These are nothing more than mathematical prediction engines, right? It is just doing calculus on what is the most probably correct word to come next in a sentence based on what information you've given it and the training data that it has. And by definition, that confidence level for each next word in the sentence is not 100%. So it's fine if you want to use it for like a brainstorming partner or you want to do it as a jumping off point for some research or something like that. But it really is a little bit scary to me, if I'm honest, to think that a lot of people take this appearance of confidence and persuasiveness that it provides. And it's not just GPT, it can be Claude or Perplexity or any of these large language models, and they see what's coming out of it, what the responses that come from these large language models as fact. And
Yeah.
that is definitely not the case. It's not a reliable source of truth for a lot of things. It's informative,
Mm.
but not reliable all the time. So, with that, if someone asks you, what is your definition of AI in one sentence, maximum two, we'll be generous, how would you define AI?
AI for me is a tool that allows you to have an intern, have somebody who understands what you're doing and what you're about to do, has a context, can work within that context, and give you directions. But it's definitely not an ultimate know-it-all thing that you can 100% rely on.
Okay. So it's like a force multiplier, right? A helper.
Yeah, like I said, Mama's little helper.
Okay.
I think that's
Okay.
the best. The best
Yeah.
definition. Stay with this one.
Okay. So on that, kind of transitioning to the kind of impact that AI is having either in your personal life or your work right now, what are some examples of either how it's changed the way you work or think, or any surprising ways that you're experimenting with it?
Mhm.
You know, if it's made you more efficient at work or in your personal life, what does it look like for you?
So in personal life, like I said, I'm very cautious about this. Sometimes, I have this super sweet, I guess, way of using it in my personal life because I have a son and he has lots of friends. And I create coloring books for them based on their lives, based on what they've experienced. And it's so much fun to just like show them what can be done and where, give them something tangible because you can also print it, where, they are the main characters. And I think this is such a nice way to get it, again, to help you literally as as a mom. So things like that, I don't necessarily feed it a lot of information about my personal life or my kids' life, but I feel like, yeah, it can be very interesting of like how creative you can get with it. In my work, absolutely. It first of all, it kind of eliminated this like staring into the abyss kind of situation where, okay, I need a piece of content or I need to know what kind of questions to ask. And, there is a founder who's never shared anything on LinkedIn or never been on a podcast or, whatever. And you're like, okay, where do I start? And then for me, I use ChatGPT to just compile a bunch of information of what's out there at all, either about the founder or the company or the topic that they're passionate about. So that helps a lot brainstorming, kind of giving the context, giving the idea of which direction I can go. So that helps me immensely. There are a few really great tools that are AI powered that I use pretty much daily right now for work. So Descript, that I have a podcast. So Descript really, really helps with editing. And I wouldn't say it's perfect. You probably know yourself when you're editing a podcast, especially if it's a bit of a more difficult case, let's say, when a founder, for example, has heavy accent. I had situations where Descript transcribed an episode with a founder from Finland speaking English, and the transcription was in Finnish. And I was like, okay, what's going on? Like, how did that happen? So clearly not perfect, but when it's a good episode, there is not much to edit. You can basically just outsource it to AI and say, okay, I want to shorten the word gaps or something like this. And this is basically all you need to do there. Then this is a great way to save some time. Riverside, a bit bumpy right now with recording, but I still like it, again, as kind of a partner for brainstorming, because what Riverside does with clips, and I think a lot of people use Opus Clip, but there is the same kind of functionality on Riverside. So you give it ideas. Okay, I want all the clips about AI, bootstrapping, SaaS, B2B, whatever. And it gives you a few clips. And even if, again, they're not perfect, because sometimes you go back to editing the podcast a week later after recording, you're like, oh, okay, yes, exactly. We were talking about this awesome thing. And maybe that can go as a short on YouTube and social media. Apart from that, obviously ChatGPT and, a surprising one. Yes, surprising for me is Lovable. Oh my God, never have I ever thought that I will say I'm vibe coding, but man, it's
Hmm.
fun. Like, yeah, I just, I started reading about it. A few people from saas.group started talking more and more about experimenting on Lovable. And I was like, you know what? Let's do this. Let's try. And yeah, and I went there with an idea. And that said, I'm 3 weeks in, I think. And, what started as a checklist is now like this full-blown SaaS platform with homepage, demo videos, dashboards, and stuff like that. And I sometimes talk about it on LinkedIn too. So it's a lot of fun. I love it and can be for me because that platform will later become two different things. The checklist will still be the checklist and we'll use it as a marketing material for our M&A course and just as is on the website. But the platform hopefully will just live its own life because it's an M&A data room that is now kind of just a demonstration visualization platform where founders can learn how it can look like, what kind of documents should be there and stuff like that. But once I'm through figuring out, how to make the security work, again, something that I never thought I would say in my life, then maybe, yeah, we'll just give it as is to founders to try.
Nice. So you're planning to upend the data room market for
Yes,
M&A with
exactly.
your vibe coded. Yeah, fantastic. That's good. I support that fully. Data rooms are, anyone who's worked in M&A knows how much of a pain in the butt data rooms can be. Last question on this. So that's really interesting. So we've got a mix of things you do for personal, then a lot more I think you do for work. And then this whole vibe coding thing is something I think you were really surprised at. Is there anything that you have stopped doing because an AI tool handles it better, or it just wasn't something that you like doing, or like, is there an example of something like that that you've stopped doing?
I don't think so, to be honest. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of editing the podcast, so when I know I can outsource it to Descript, I do that, but it's not like I just I just give anything to it. I'm very picky about the quality of the end product,
Mm,
so I cannot just do it just like that. Good question. No, I don't think so. No.
yeah, that's fair. I think a lot of people are concerned about replacement, so AI replacing us in our jobs and whatnot. And I think if we take too many steps back and we become a little bit lazy and complacent, that will become the truth, right? It'll become a self-fulfilling prophecy. If we're just using AI to do our actual work, then we are actually no longer needed. But the real thing that we as knowledge workers especially, but anyone, any profession needs to do is understand how to collaborate with and leverage this as a tool that is a force multiplier for us and remain that human in the loop, automating or removing some of the lower value tasks, and leveraging this as a brainstorming partner or a jumping off point for, like what you mentioned, putting together an episode outline or a set of questions and really using it together, because human by itself will not win. Computer or AI by itself will not win either. It's the human plus computer that is going to win the day. And I think we all have a responsibility, if we're worried about replacement, to make sure that we're not taking a step back, becoming lazy, complacent, and not doing our work, right?
No, no. And like it's really interesting now, like because it's AI, right? And it's learned from us and it's learning from what we're continuously doing. So now you go to LinkedIn and, okay, why all of a sudden all the posts have the same format? Oh no,
Oh,
didn't
that's
we?
hell. Yeah,
Didn't we all just copy
it's
it?
terrible.
Yeah, right. So,
Yeah.
by the way, I lied. There is one thing that I don't do anymore. And if you go to saas Group website, we do have a page with all the podcasts, right? And all the podcasts they don't have a transcript there, but they do have a blog post that is created out of the transcript. And I've got to be honest with you, the first maybe even 50 episodes, I was getting the blog post from AI and then I was rewriting the entire thing. It was incredibly hard. And now I don't do this anymore. That's it. I found my little precious tool that works well, that knows the tone of voice that I'm looking for. And yeah, I just outsource it.
Okay. That's fair. I think as long as you're reviewing it before it
Oh,
gets
yeah.
posted.
I'm
Yeah.
still the human in the loop. Yes.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. So I want to switch gears here because in addition to the podcast, you do a lot of in-person events that helps with our M&A pipeline and just kind of building the community of SaaS founders. And I'd like to talk a little bit about AI in the future of networking. So how do you see it changing in-person events, managing a community, even human conversations in the future? And also, have you started to see some of those themes or those changes cropping up already?
I mean, maybe I've even seen them, but I don't recall anything like this, to be honest. I don't know. Again, I'm very skeptical about AI in this particular use case. I feel like, the more we want to AI everything and automate everything, the more precious is the actual real life event. And like you said, we've been hosting real life events like literally all over the world the last couple of months. And it's what I hear every time. Like, this is valuable. We want to see people. We want to talk to people face to face. And, especially in our industry, right? We write pretty big checks, right? I don't want to talk to AI. I don't want to get a summary from a call. I want to talk to a person who's going to buy my company, who is giving me this much money for what I've just built, but they're also getting me for the next couple of years. So if there is an earnout and yada, 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 right? There can be very different scenarios. But yeah, I don't know. Real life events, hopefully, they won't be automated just yet. I mean, I think there are so many ways to implement it and so much potential there to personalize the experience, to make sure, you kind of summarize the learnings in real life and involve more people. But I feel like the more AI, the more note takers join the call, the more real people you want there on the floor with you and face to face. Because, I mean, remember COVID, right? We were like, oh, yes, but everything can be done over Zoom. And then after a year, we were like, man, no, can't we just go back and, I don't want to say touch people, but
Yeah, but yeah,
you know
no,
what I
be
mean?
present with
Yes.
people. I do, I do. And I totally agree. I mean, one of the, and actually, if we talk about SaaS Group, this isn't necessarily about AI, but I think it touches on this need for human connection and kind of in-person relationships. So SaaS Group is 100% remote, and there are a lot of fantastic things about that. The freedom to work where it makes sense, to live where you want to live, but we still acknowledge that it's important for us to get together on a semi-regular basis so that we can see each other, be in the same room, share jokes, break bread together, whatever else. And I agree. I think, tying this back to what you were saying, as we go down this road of so much being AI focused and LinkedIn being full of AI slop, where everything is exactly the same format and all of that, it will become increasingly important and increasingly precious to have these in-person events and not have a machine, intermediating our conversations or actually, driving our conversations entirely.
Absolutely. I heard about this thing. I don't know, maybe you've heard about this too. It's called Limitless. Do you know what it is?
Hmm.
Right. So for those who don't, it's like this little pendant, I guess, that you wear around your neck, and you walk around with it listening to everything you're saying and everything that's being said to you. And then it analyzes your life and helps you and it automates whatever. And I was like, at first, when I heard about this, it was like, oh, wow, okay, that's creepy. I'm not sure, like, there are a lot of people right now that can just do that and be okay with that. But the founder who was talking to me about this with this very interesting use case, and I think if you're doing, I don't know, a lot of events, really just traveling all the time, this can be a really cool one. So what he said is basically if you've been to, I don't know, 10 conferences over a month and you met this person on one of them, so Limitless knows about your conversation, right? And knows who this person is, and it can help you. Okay, it can help you remember basically, okay, well, I met Joe. He's one of the CEOs of one of our brands. Oh, cool. Okay, last time we talked about this. Amazing. And I
Hmm.
think, yes, okay, great. But I also feel like if you don't remember a person, maybe there is a reason, maybe you don't need to. So run for your
Yeah.
life.
I would actually go a little bit further with that. I think when we start to think that there is this little helper that's always recording what's being said and will always be able to remind us when we have a question or can't, think of something, we will start to lose the ability to retain that information ourselves because we know we always have this assistant to rely upon. So I think your point about if you can't remember someone, maybe it wasn't memorable enough is totally valid. But I also think if we start to rely on these tools to a greater extent over time, we will lose the incentive to try to commit a lot of things to memory. And from a certain perspective, it allows us to do more as humans because our ability to remember things is relatively finite. Maybe there's some variance from one person to the next, but we can't remember anything like what an algorithm could remember. Like we can't read or ingest all of the training data used to train ChatGPT. No human could actually do any of that, right? So there's a difference there. But I worry that these parts of our brain will start to atrophy and it will be increasingly difficult for us to retain these moments with each other if we rely on something like that. It seems like a little bit dystopian to me.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. I think that that's also true because already, the kind of the attention span is, I don't know, what is it now? Limited to like 15 seconds or something?
Yeah, that is a little bit sad. It's interesting though, when I was back in university, I read a book, can't remember the name of it, but it was looking at trends and concerns over time in human history. And there was a newspaper article that was written in the 1920s talking about how terrible it is that our attention spans are reducing and what will the world become if we can't pay attention to books and all of that kind of stuff. So I think to a certain extent, this is the human condition to always be concerned about the dark future and what will happen and kind of looking at things from a really pessimistic perspective. So it's attention span, I think, has been a perennial problem for humans, at least in modern times. So,
Yeah,
but, still a concern, I guess I would say.
yeah.
So, want to transition to some unanswered questions or all unsolved problems that you see either directly within your life at work or personal, or just kind of with AI in general. So, let's start off with what are some things that you're still unsure or really hesitant about as pertains to AI?
Okay, so maybe I can go back to this experiment with vibe coding, and it for me it was because I have like zero technical background, right? And it all sounded like magic, right? Okay, so you just tell it, I want this project, and it codes it, and everything's fine. And the more I started thinking about it, and the more I started kind of digging deeper and building this thing, the more I realized, okay, so it gets complex and like ChatGPT starts to hallucinate and it starts to forget what I asked it for, and it starts to become too complex for its own good. And the other day I was what was it? I was trying to change something and I was getting nowhere. Absolutely nowhere. And it took.
The way you were trying to change something in the vibe coded
Yes,
application
exactly.
that you
Yeah,
built?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And it like it was a dead end. And it took 40 minutes of my friend, who is an actual developer, of him talking to Lovable. I use Lovable in his own developer language. So it's not like, okay, can you go and look here? And, on the third line, after the headline, I see that I don't know, some element is not right, and I want it to look prettier. That's how I talk to these tools. And he was like, "Okay, the element is positioned there and here." So it was like a lot of developer lingo. I cannot go there and and reproduce it. But yeah, it was so hard. And he was like, "Okay, well, it looks great, right? But nobody knows what's under the hood." And basically, that like in a month, when you'll think it's done and it's perfect, something will break and you'll have to come to me and pay the big bucks to try and debug this monster. And
Yeah.
I think that's an unsolvable problem for me right now, and for a lot of people who try to use it as this magic little machine. And first of all, yes, you need to learn how it works. You need to learn how to talk to it. You need to learn at least a little bit what it, because sometimes, Lovable sends me this sheet of code and says, okay, line 137, we see the issue here. Do you see the issue here? Can I do this? And I'm like, yes, sure, go ahead. I have no idea, right? So I feel like, yeah, it's sold as this magic pill, but we don't understand the complexity of it and we don't understand the limitations. And I think, yeah, it's very important, something unsolvable for me yet. And I'm not saying that, it cannot be solved. Maybe, in a month, 2 months, they're like perfect, right? And all the Wixes and Webflows of the world are just wiped out. But yeah, definitely not yet.
Yeah. I think vibe coding is a really interesting topic because it's fantastic for prototyping, right? If you have an idea, you can go to it with that and you can build something really simple and straightforward. But your friend is talking about the maintainability, the adaptability, the improvements over time, and all of that. I think that's the biggest concern that I have from seeing vibe coded applications or functions making their way into something that our customers use on a regular basis. It's just really difficult to actually trust that, you know? It's like I said, fantastic for prototyping, but the way I would kind of explain it is when I taught myself how to code, I did some Python tutorials and I was writing functions and everything seemed good. But the second that I tried to take that knowledge and develop a more complicated application using a specific web framework, connecting it to a database, I realized that I was missing the object-oriented kind of language understanding and what that really means and how you put logic together and do things. Because I didn't have that deep technical understanding, I was just kind of iterating on the things that I saw in the tutorial that I did or the series of tutorials, and I wasn't able to do something more complex. And I think what's really interesting is right now you get a lot of people who talk about how AI will replace software engineers the world over in the 2 years or something, really brief like that. Interestingly, most of the people I see saying that are not people who write code on a daily basis. So we have to take their assertions with a grain of salt. A lot of them tend to be investors or people who have stakes in this industry growing in a significant way. So they're really pushing a narrative. And if you actually zoom in and talk to an engineer that writes code every day, you'll understand how far away this is from being able to be an autonomous engineer. And the vibe coding is where I think it really comes to light because of the difficulty with maintainability and people like us who maybe aren't very technical, we don't understand the different libraries that are being called there. If some of them have security problems, when one pushes an update and it breaks a dependency somewhere else further there, some of us don't even understand the dependency chains that are inside of these vibe coded apps. So it's a really, really challenging topic, and I don't think it's going to get better anytime soon. So vibe coding for prototyping, not production.
Yeah, that's a bit of a concern for me, like building that platform, because, I got into this is like my little passion project and I want it to see the light of day. But at the same time, yes, I look at it and I feel like, okay, this is a data room thing. This is something very ambitious because what founders have to share there is very sensitive. So I cannot just go and say, you know what? Coded with Lovable. Amazing. No, this is going to be, this can get us in trouble. But yeah, like I said, this is going to go in two directions. First, as just a checklist, which, like you said, just a simple prototype, use it as is, download it, whatever, and visualization or demonstration kind of platform where you go, you learn how it can look like, you learn what documents you need to upload, you know how you can communicate with your team, your acquirers, and so on, but nothing else for now. Because yeah, the concern about maintainability, security, everything is definitely there.
Yeah. So I want to also talk about a skill or a mindset you feel like needs to be developed alongside increasing use of AI. And I think what you were mentioning there is a perfect kind of segue into that. If I would start with this, I would say we kind of need to develop a more robust sense of skepticism and a critical eye toward the things that AI produces on our behalf or at our request. And the vibe coding experiment that you're enjoying or not right now is a good example of that. Would you say there are any other skills or mindsets that people should be aware of that need to develop alongside the increased use of AI?
Yeah, I think as a good start, you definitely have to be skeptical of what AI is telling you. And sometimes I have arguments with AI, with ChatGPT and Lovable and whatnot, because yeah, sometimes I don't know, it just wouldn't go any further. And you're like, okay, let's start from the beginning. And yeah, and you kind of have to explain yourself over again. I also think this is just something that I use as a little hack for myself, is that AI probably also knows that it can make mistakes. I mean, in ChatGPT, you get it, right? This in teeny tiny font down there, it says AI ChatGPT makes mistakes. And what I do, especially in Lovable, when I hit a wall and I'm like, okay, there is a mistake somewhere here, but I don't know where. Because, like you said, I don't understand all the dependencies and I don't understand what's going on under the hood. So I will ask the AI, okay, if you were me, what would you be correcting first? What would you be fixing first? Where is the technical debt? Where where does it smell fishy? And it helps. It
Yeah.
really helps. And I think what you need to understand is you're not the master of AI. It's a conversation. So if you say, okay, I don't know what to ask next. I don't know. Like yesterday, it's the simplest example of yesterday, my son came back from school and he was like, I was learning about Titanic. And then we talked to Perplexity about it. He was kind of like sharing with her what he learned, and she would give more intel about this. And then I gave him the phone back.
Perplexity is the her, right?
Yes,
Just
yeah,
to make sure.
Perplexity is her. Sorry.
Okay. Got
Um,
it. Okay.
and
All right.
and he was like, okay, I'm out of questions. And again, we just went back and we're like, okay, Perplexity, we're out of questions. Like, what are we missing? What is the cool piece of information about Titanic, for example, that we would enjoy? Because you just learned what kind of information we want to know. And she offered a few more, a few more accidents with cruise ships and stuff like that. So it was, creepy but fun. And yeah, it's. I think you need to always remember you don't know everything, and you don't know the capabilities of AI. So sometimes you need to give it a try to give you an idea and give you a direction.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, do you have any resources that you might recommend for people kind of curious about AI? It could be newsletters, podcasts, specific tools, thought leaders to follow, or even just general mindset shifts.
Joe, I'm hanging out on LinkedIn. I feed off, everything that people talk about. I have very little time for something else. So I do try to keep up with what's shared on social media, because usually people share like what they have learned about, what they tried. We do have AI channel on Slack within saas group as well, and there's plenty of nerds to learn from. So it's I think those two are my two biggest inspiration channels.
Okay. Let me ask you a little bit about LinkedIn, though. So, We were just talking about it a little bit ago, how formulaic everything is. It all follows the same format. How do you deal with this kind of fatigue? 'Cause, for me, for example, LinkedIn is very hard to stomach. It's like even people that I really respect or good leaders in the different fields that I like to follow, some of the content that's coming out now is just really difficult to read. Not because it's grammatically incorrect or the content there isn't valuable, but it's all the exact same format with the hook and then, expand to read more. And then you have all of the emoji arrows and fingers and everything like pointing you around in the text and whatever. Like, how do you deal with that AI slop fatigue?
Damn it, I use a lot of emojis and I don't use AI for posts. All right, well, first of all, you're right. Like, it's very easy if you're on LinkedIn a lot. It's very easy for you to spot. It's the first two sentences and then a picture, and then you have to read, and it's kind of like two sentences, three sentences, two sentences, three sentences. Very weirdly looking post, but they're all the same now, and they kind of work also with the algorithm. I don't know, maybe LinkedIn is testing something new. Like I said, very easy to spot, and I just skip them. You know what? Even if there is anything valuable there, I don't want to read that. Honestly, I feel like it started maybe a couple of years ago with some of the bigger names on LinkedIn who would share the most basic stuff and everyone would clap. And it would be the pretty much the same kind of narrative. And again, I don't know, for some reason people liked it. Everyone wanted to do the same. And it was bizarre, but now you actually have an opportunity. Okay, I will feed you 100 or like 1,000, 10,000, the most popular posts from LinkedIn. Create the same 10,000 posts for me that I will then share in the course of the next 3 years. Absolutely horrible. I mean, come on, have some respect for your job.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It makes me want to go back to like, do you remember? I think it's been a while since I've seen this, but a couple of years ago, there was this basic post that was something surprising and business related that your child understood and said, and started the conversation. Do you remember that?
I
It was
proposed to
like,
my girlfriend over the
can you
weekend,
believe my?
and that's what I learned about
Yeah,
B2B
exactly.
SaaS. Ah,
This really like squeezing in this personal life story. Most of them seemed like they were fake anyway into your business profile. It was so, and honestly, at this point, with everything that I'm seeing, I kind of want to go back to that. I want to go back to the surprising thing that your 8-year-old realized about product marketing strategy or something like I that would be refreshing at this point because I think it would be less AI generated.
yeah, not to rant excessively about AI. I think still it's a great thing, but be the human in the loop. And I feel like when you care about something, I mean, give it 2 minutes, right? Like it's again, I had this moment when a host of the podcast reached out to me and he was like, Anna, you interviewed this founder, and I really I wanted to interview him for the longest time. Can I send you an email that you can just use as is, as an intro for me and for my podcast, and send to him? And I'm like, yeah, sure, absolutely. I mean, no problem. And then he sends it to me. And what do you know? It's AI generated. You can see it from a mile away that it's AI generated because it's the tone of voice that ChatGPT uses. And I'm like, dude, seriously, you wanted this guy on your podcast for the longest time, so you used 15 seconds to do this? Oh, no, no. And then I said, no, unless you actually write something decent, I'm not sending this. I mean, it's cringe.
Yeah, yeah, I get that. All
Sorry.
right. So,
What?
no, no, I fully agree. I think, being a business leader, I get so many obviously AI generated emails and messages and all of this stuff. And it's just, I can tell within the first sentence and it just goes straight to trash or straight to spam. I don't have any, interest in engaging with that because I think you make a really good point. If something is worth enough for you to prioritize it, it's worth enough for you to spend 2 minutes crafting a specific message. And I worry that we're starting to lose the ability to do that as humans, to write a good, email that resonates with the recipient, and to, use our powers of persuasion and, just craft something. I feel like we're really missing that. So I understand your pain for
Thank you.
sure.
I just lashed out there.
Anyway, Anna, where can the people find you and the podcast?
Oh, that's very easy. It's Anna Nadeina on LinkedIn. And like I said, I don't really spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, but I'm very responsive there. So, if you make it to messages, 99.9% that I will reply unless it's AI generated.
Okay. All
Um,
right. Word to the wise. Yeah.
yes, it's Anna at saas.group and the podcast saas.unbound, and you can find it on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, I think pretty much on any platform out there. So go look.
Great. Well, it was nice to host you for a change. So thanks for spending some time with us. And yeah, let's do it again sometime.
Sure, it felt great. Thank you. I wasn't weirded out at all. You made it so simple. Thank you, Joe.
Thanks for tuning in to Get Discovered, a podcast where AI, SEO, and the future of online visibility collide. For more about us, swing by Prerender.io. We make sure your site isn't hiding from Google, Bing, or the next-gen AI bots sniffing around for fresh content. I'm Joe Walsh. See you next time.